Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming at such short notice. This morning I convened an urgent meeting of the emergency management team. We have a serious update to provide the West Australian community. At about midnight last night, we received a positive COVID-19 test result. That positive result has come from a male hotel quarantine security guard in his 20s. The information we have is fast evolving. As you can understand, immediately our teams moved into place to begin contact tracing and put in place emergency response systems. This is all underway, and I ask everyone to be cooperative and understanding of what is going to take place. Here is what we know about the male who tested positive. He was working at one of the state's hotel quarantine facilities, the Sheraton 4 Points in the city. He had tested negative for COVID-19 on Friday, January 15th, Sunday 17th, and Saturday, January 23rd, as part of the weekly testing system that is in place. When the man was working at this hotel, there were 4 active cases of COVID-19 in hotel quarantine. Of those 4 cases, we have at least 3 confirmed variant strains, 2 UK and 1 South African. We are told the guard was working on the same floor as a positive UK variant case. The guard completed 2 12-hour shifts on both the 26th and 27th of January. Exactly how the infection was acquired remains under investigation. He developed symptoms on Thursday, 28 January, and phoned in sick and did not go to work at the quarantine facility. The Health Department contact tracing team has pulled together a list of potential exposure sites of where this positive case has been in recent days. The Health Minister will provide that information shortly. The investigation is ongoing by our public health team, and it is likely more locations will be added following further discussions with the man. Anyone who was at the locations is urged to attend a COVID-19 clinic for testing and remain in quarantine whilst awaiting test results. Close contacts will be contacted by public health officials and asked to quarantine for 14 days. The man did use the Safe WA app at mandatory locations. Our COVID-19 testing clinics are being ramped up with additional staff and additional hours, many to at least 10 p.m. tonight. Private testing clinics will also be available for testing, and we are working with them on this as we speak. More information on testing clinics will be available on our website, the WA Health and WA Government websites. The man's immediate household contacts have been contacted, tested and placed in isolation at state-managed quarantine facilities to complete a 14-day quarantine period in a quarantine facility. All 3 have tested negative this morning. However, we can expect that they will become positive in coming days. Genome sequencing is underway on the positive case, and results will be known by Tuesday morning. However, based on the information we have, it appears possible that this new positive case has the highly transmissible UK variant. The past year has been unlike any other. Western Australians have done an incredible job. It's something I'm very proud of. But as we have always known with COVID, it can change very quickly. Today we need to go back to what we know best to ensure we limit community transmission of COVID-19 in our state. Even though it was nearly 10 months ago, WA has experienced community transmission of this virus before. We all did the right thing and we crushed it. And it worked. So beginning at 6 p.m. tonight, the whole Perth metropolitan area, the Peel region and the southwest region will be going into full lockdown. This lockdown will last until 6 p.m. on Friday, a 5-day lockdown. It's crucial we act quickly to keep the community safe. We cannot forget how quickly this virus can spread, nor the devastation it can cause. Following our discussions with the Chief Health Officer and Police Commissioner, the following measures will be put in place from 6 p.m. tonight. People in these regions are required to stay home, except for the following 4 reasons: shopping for essentials like groceries, medicines, and necessary supplies; medical or healthcare needs, including compassionate requirements and looking after the vulnerable; exercise within their neighbourhood, but only with one other person and only for 1 hour per day; work where you cannot work from home or remotely. In addition to this stay-home rule, if you do leave home for one of the 4 reasons, you will be required to wear a mask at all times outside, and if you need to do work indoors, then wearing a mask is also mandatory. To be clear, mask wearing on public transport is also mandatory. People in the Perth, Peel or Southwest regions need to stay inside their region for the next 5 days, unless for an essential reason. We are strongly encouraging that everyone in this area who is from another WA region stay here. Do not travel further outside of this area until the lockdown is over. If you do need to travel outside the region, if you do need to travel outside the region you are in now, that can only occur if you need to return to your place of residence. The transport of essential goods into this region is permitted under our existing transport guidelines. This lockdown means the following businesses, venues and locations need to close for the next 5 days: pubs, bars and clubs, gyms and indoor sporting venues, playgrounds, skate parks and outdoor recreational facilities, cinemas, entertainment venues and casinos, large religious gatherings and places of worship, libraries and cultural institutions. Restaurants and cafes will close and provide takeaway service only. 10 people can attend funerals. Weddings are cancelled for the next 5 days. No visitors are permitted to your home unless caring for someone vulnerable or in an emergency. No visitors will be allowed in aged care homes unless exceptional circumstances. No visitors to hospitals and or disability facilities unless exceptional circumstances. Elective surgery and procedures for categories 2 and 3 will be suspended from Tuesday 2 February. Category 1 and urgent category 2 surgery will continue. For a majority of schools, school was due to start tomorrow. That has now been put on hold, and schools will be closed until next week, following the lockdown measures. It is in effect an extension of the school holidays. I have been in contact with the Prime Minister and my fellow state and territory colleagues to advise them of this situation. I have recommended that they put a stop to any travel into WA as an extra precautionary measure. Border controls are important here, and I 100% support them to ensure that we can get through this. All these measures will be reviewed regularly, and the Chief Health Officer will continue to monitor this serious situation and provide more ongoing advice. This is an extremely fast-moving situation. I've convened a meeting of the State Disaster Council after this press conference to ensure across government we are working together and doing everything we can. I know for many Western Australians this is going to come as a shock. Western Australians have done so well for so long, but this week it is absolutely crucial that we stay home, maintain physical distancing and personal hygiene, and get tested if you have symptoms. This is a very serious situation, and each and every one of us has to do everything we personally can to stop the spread in the community. We have acted decisively and swiftly in the circumstances. I want to thank everyone in advance for their patience and understanding. In effect, for a short period of time, we are going back to what we experienced in March and April of last year. This is a highly unpredictable virus, but it is important to act calmly and take sensible precautions. Leaving your home to purchase food and essentials will be permitted during lockdown. I say this so people understand you do not need to rush to the supermarket today. Take care of your loved ones and be respectful of others, including those who are working, to keep essential services and supplies ticking over. Our state is well equipped to handle this situation. We have systems in place throughout the health system that are swinging into action as we speak. We have the capacity to manage this situation. Throughout the pandemic, the response of Western Australians has been second to none. The community has done everything we have asked of them. They have made great sacrifices and has kept our state safe. I could not be more proud and thankful of the way West Australians have carried themselves. Now we're asking for your help once again. I urge the community to act calmly. This is crucial. Our measures have always been based on the best of health advice. We've maintained a careful, cautious approach throughout, and our measures have worked. Despite our state's success, we have been well prepared to respond to any situations as they emerge. We will provide further updates as they come to hand. All relevant information will be posted on websites as it comes to hand. The Health Minister will now go through a list of potential exposure sites.
Thank you, Premier. Just to provide you with details on the potential exposure sites, and our contact tracing team is still working with this case, and as more venues are recalled, the list of exposure sites will be updated on the Healthy WA website and their wa.gov.au website. So I'll run through the current list with you. It is Coles Maylands Supermarket on the 25th of January between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. KFC Maylands on the 27th of January from 6 p.m. to midnight. Mitsubishi Motors car dealership in Midland on the 27th of January from 7 p.m. to close. Spudshed Coventry Village in Morley on the 27th of January from 8 p.m. to midnight. ECU Joondalup on the 28th of January from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Consulate General of India on St George's Terrace in Perth on the 28th of January from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Halal Grocery Store in Cloverdale on the 28th of January from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Venus Ladies and Gentlemen Hair Design in Maylands, hairdressers on the 29th of January from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Perth Convention Centre on the 29th of January from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Nedlands Family Practice GP Surgery on the 29th of January from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Chemist Warehouse in North Perth Pharmacy on the 29th of January from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. 7-Eleven Ascot Petrol Station on the 29th of January from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Coles Mayland Supermarket on the 29th of January from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. The Puma Service Station in Burswood on the 30th of January from 11 a.m. to 12 midday. Coles Express Shell Service Station in Cloverdale on the 30th of January from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pharmacy 777 at Maylands Park Shopping Centre the 30th of January from 2:30 to 4 p.m. Now, people who have been to these venues on these dates must attend a COVID clinic and be tested. In addition, people who live or work in the Falkirk Avenue Maylands area, including Coles, Liquorland and the Maylands Shopping Precinct, should present for a test also. They must, after having undertaken the test, they must go home and isolate until a negative test result is returned. Now, I want to stress, that the public COVID clinics are open now and will remain open until 10 p.m. tonight with extra staffing. And they'll reopen from 8 a.m. tomorrow. So please don't rush in. We simply ask that you get tested over the coming days while you are isolating at home. In addition to that, you would appreciate from a lot of those venues that the Royal Perth Hospital Clinic will likely be under some pressure, so you have the opportunity to go to a different separate clinic such as St Charles Gardner or Joondalup. Please take advantage of that opportunity also. So any questions?
Was this person an Uber driver as well?
We understand that that person hasn't worked in any other role during the period in question.
So what went wrong?
Well, that's under investigation, obviously, because something did go wrong. And we need to get to the bottom of that. Obviously, at this point in time, we're investigating the current active cases in the hotel and undertaking genomic sequencing of those cases, and that will be known in the next 24 to 48 hours. And obviously doing genomic sequencing on the individual himself. And once we have those details, we'll have the opportunity to provide you or provide ourselves with further insights into where the gentleman contracted the disease, what variant or strain he contracted it from, and in the context of that, what was the likely reason that he contracted it.
Just for clarity,
Sure.
because people are looking to go to work tomorrow or not going to work tomorrow, so if you're in the public service or you're in one of the big high-rises in the city or wherever you're working, do you go to work or do you stay home?
Well, you only go to work if you are considered essential to the operation. So obviously there's memos going out or emails going out to a lot of public sector workers as we speak, inviting them to work from home. And people will be familiar with this, Jeff, as a result of our experience in early last year. So if you were able to work from home during that period, the next 5 days is a good opportunity for you to exercise that to work from home as well.
Just on the closures, pubs, etc., pubs, gyms, are they only closing in the relevant lockdown areas? And schools, is that only in the relevant lockdown areas or is it statewide?
The relevant lockdown areas is the metropolitan area, Peel and Southwest.
Okay, but so the pubs, gyms, etc. can stay open in the Pilbara, the Kimberley, etc. And schools?
Yes, well this is only for the people in the specific areas mentioned.
And are people who are living outside the Southwest Peel, Perth area, are they allowed to come into that area if they're holidaying up north? Are they able to drive back in?
Well, look, we don't want people to come to the metropolitan area at the moment. It would be unwise. Our main concern is to make sure people in the metropolitan area do not travel outside of those. So Peel, Southwest and Metropolitan do not travel outside unless they're returning home to a principal place of residence.
So while we're on there, and I'll probably get it from the Commissioner
Sure.
when he gets up, but will those checkpoints that we saw in the different regions, albeit now it's only the sort of Perth, Peel, Southwest regions, will there be police checkpoints?
You're right, the Police Commissioner will be able to provide with more details.
So at the moment you said something did go wrong. I mean, what sort of do you know about the scenario of this worker in the hotel environment and mixing with the quarantine people?
Well, he worked on it over a couple of days. He was on a specific. The reason why we're particularly interested around the UK variants is because we know he was on a floor with an active case. We don't know if that's the active case that he caught it from, or if it's from some other interaction in the workplace.
Has he said he had any interaction? Has he said, I went into the room? Or?
No, we know he didn't go into a room. We know he didn't expose himself unnecessarily. And as a result of that, we'll undertake necessary investigations. Obviously, this is a very fresh situation. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. What we will be doing over the coming 24 and 48 hours is undertaking extensive contact tracing. And our contact tracing teams stood up early this morning and have been working hard during this period. They'll continue to do more work, and if we have to add any other places to the contact places to the register, we'll be placing that information on the appropriate websites. But obviously we will need to undertake an extensive inquiry into how he contracted it. It may be as a result of one of the new variants. It may be as a result of a failure or a gap in our systems. We'll be able to respond to that once we've done the full investigation.
So this gentleman has potentially been exposed to hundreds of people, hence the importance of those individuals who've been in those locations getting tested?
Look, we're taking a precautionary response, but we always said that in the event that there was an incident, that we would take a hard response and making sure that we got on top of any outbreak of the disease wherever it occurred. I should note that pleasingly the gentleman's housemates at this point in time have returned a negative result. So that's a sign that we have really got on top of this very early on in terms of the incident. But it is a serious situation, and that's why we're inviting everyone to undertake the measures that we're all familiar with, that we undertook during March and April last year. And for 5 days, we're all just going to make sure that we take the opportunity to get on top of this situation.
How long do you
many
think this
days?
person was potentially infectious for?
I don't have that information, but I'm sure Andy, the Chief Health Officer, will be able to provide with those details.
Did he require any hospitalisation?
No.
So, sorry, I might have missed this. Where did he sort of get picked up with the test positive? Where was that? Did that go to
At one of our COVID clinics. Yeah.
Do you understand them?
No.
There's going to be a big movement of people outside of the area when FIFO workers get on planes tomorrow and go north. Are they still to do that? Is it the idea to keep that going as is, that industry as is, despite the restrictions in Perth?
Yeah, so obviously there's no problems with FIFO workers coming in, but the Premier's office has been in touch with the mining industry today and as we speak, and we'll be exploring with them what they need to do to keep their operations ticking up. And as I said, this is for 5 days, and I'm sure it can be managed.
And another one, because we're all getting texts to ask
of course
questions. Birthing partners, people giving birth, are their partners going to be able to attend with them?
Yeah, I'll get the Chief Health Officer to
Just on the exposure sites, so it dates back 6 days between the 25th and the 30th. Yesterday he obviously returned a positive test, so 6 days he was in the community, potentially infectious. That's obviously your fear.
Yeah, well, obviously anyone who's infectious and in the community presents a public health risk, and you'll notice that from a lot of these times, some of them were brief encounters, but you can't take any risks. And as a result of that, and you're right, so he's been out there in the community, potentially infectious during some or all of that period. And as a result of that, we are taking the deliberate, cautious, calm, and significant steps to make sure that we limit any potential public health risks.
Why has it taken 6 days to detect his infection potentially? When we were told that there was daily testing of quarantine workers happening? Daily
testing has commenced, but it's a recent testing process. It's only just commenced this week. As the Premier said, this gentleman was subject to regular testing as part of our previous 7-day testing regime.
So when did the daily testing start?
This week, late in the week. So we've had a pilot program being run out of one of the hotels, and in relation to the legal requirements and the administrative requirements, as we announced, I think the Premier and I announced that on Friday, that commenced. That has commenced this week.
In a pilot program in one hotel, but not in this gentleman's hotel.
Not in this so it's commenced now. So it happened at the end of this week, but he wouldn't have been picked up in terms of that daily process.
So when was he swabbed? With the tests that came back are positive for COVID. When did that swabbing take place?
I'll get Andy to provide those timelines.
That's a long list of places. Did he individually visit all of those? Are you worried about his housemates having visited those places?
We're not worried about his housemates at the moment. They've returned a negative result. Now, it could be that they are just in the early stages of their experience of the disease, and that they will become symptomatic, infectious, and return a positive result later. So that's a really pleasing development.
Was he wearing PPE in the hotel?
Yes, he would have been wearing the appropriate PPE.
So all those exposure sites are related to this one individual?
My understanding that is the case. Yeah.
There's an AFLW game on literally right now, thousands of people at Fremantle Oval. Should that game be getting called off, and should people be going home?
The measures that we've taken today will commence from 6 p.m. this evening, and obviously we need to make sure that those measures are put in place. I don't see the need to cancel a game, but I'll ask the Premier to provide further comments.
And obviously there's Big Bash, isn't there? Big Bash.
Sorry, any questions?
Off the stadium, Big Bash. Is that?
So our measures start at 6 p.m. tonight. Obviously, we found out about this morning, and we've been in meetings all morning, resolving how we deal with this with the Police Commissioner, the Chief Health Officer, health officials, other police officials, people from the Department of Premier and Cabinet, Public Sector Commissioner, everyone, working out all the measures we put in place. So the measures will start from 6 p.m. this evening. In the time between now and then, I just urge people to be sensible and do the right thing. There is no need to rush the supermarkets. There will not be a shortage of toilet paper or other goods. You'll be able to go out and shop for essentials over the course of this week. So urge everyone just to be calm and to act responsibly.
Why didn't daily testing of quarantine workers start much earlier? They could have ensured that this particular case was potentially caught far earlier.
We announced daily saliva testing. So we've had a regime of weekly PCR testing. So it's up the nose with the swab, which is highly accurate testing. That's been in place for a long period of time. This man was tested on the 15th of January, the 17th of January, the 23rd of January as part of that regime. What we announced, I think it was maybe the 8th or 9th of January, is we were going to a saliva testing on a daily basis. That was following a National Cabinet meeting where the states broadly agreed that that's what we would do. We then went to a measure using the Novotel to test it, to work out how it would work and the protocols that would be put in place around that. Following all of that testing, I'm advised the regime and the protocols and all the work around it, because it's not easy, this is a big exercise to roll this out, I'm advised that regime started late last week, so as of Friday or thereabouts last week. His last day at work in hotel was Wednesday. He worked in the hotels on the 26th and 27th, which from my memory is Tuesday and Wednesday. We suspect he contracted the illness on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. So he went to the doctor and then he got COVID tested and we got the results last night. So look, we put in place the saliva testing as quickly as we could using the health department and the appropriate protocols. Unfortunately, it didn't start till late this week. Anyway, he did the PCR testing as well. It came back negative. The last date was the 23rd of January.
And he didn't work any secondary jobs?
We're advised that he may have been a driver for one of the rideshare companies. We're also advised that he has not worked since he has been found to be, since he worked last time in the hotel. So the last day he worked in the hotel was Wednesday, but we're advised, and this has been carefully followed, that he did not do any other work in the time since.
He wasn't an Uber driver then?
He may well have been, I don't know which it was.
But he was a rideshare driver?
I'm advised that he may have had a second job along those lines, but I'm also advised that he has not undertaken any work of that nature since Wednesday, which was his last day of working in hotel quarantine.
Wasn't that one of the protocols?
He worked his last shift
as a driver.
I don't know that, but we think he acquired the illness on Tuesday or Wednesday of the last week. So
There's been that
if I can
warning
just
body.
finish what I'm saying,
Yeah.
we think he worked. His last days were Tuesday and Wednesday. So therefore he got tested, I think, yesterday or the day before because he was feeling unwell. He went to a GP, then to a COVID clinic, so we got the results last night. We're advised he has not worked a second job in the time since he was found to be, in the time since he last worked in hotel quarantine.
Isn't that wasn't that something that the governments were advised to address, where security workers held secondary jobs? And shouldn't that have been addressed a long time ago?
We have worked to address that. But it has been a difficult system to resolve because essentially, you rely a lot on trust. Because if people do an odd shift here or there, elsewhere, it is hard to police that. So we've been working on what protocols and what arrangements we can put in place around that for some period of time, but it has been a hard thing to resolve. But in any event, in the case of this person, the advice I have is that he has not worked a second job since he contracted the virus. And so his visits, if you like, to various places that the Health Minister outlined, they're the ones that we are currently tracking. I just urge everyone, this is a very important point, I'd urge everyone, if you're unwell, get tested. If you feel sick, get tested. If you've been to any of those venues, get tested. This is the time to get tested. And we have increased the hours, we've increased the staffing, we've done everything we can to ramp up the capacity of our COVID clinics. Just to say this as well, it is a hot day and there's hot days ahead. The hours that the COVID clinics are operating are long, but I'd be prepared that there may be a wait. This is the normal practice around Australia and around the world. We expect that there will be a wait when you go to get tested. Take a hat, take sunscreen, take water.
This gentleman, it looks like Maylands is kind of the epicentre. Does he live in the Falkirk Avenue area?
Yes, he does. So he lives in that area, I'm advised. That is why we're especially focused on that. But as you know, people travel. So the Health Minister outlined the places he has visited. And if anyone has been in those places on those dates and on those occasions, they should get tested as well.
And is he in a block of flats or a share house?
I understand he shares a unit with 3 other people. The 3 other people have been tested. They've been found to be negative, which is great news, because if they've been found to be negative, the chances are, very high probability, they are not infectious. So therefore, they've been found to be negative, but we put them into hotel quarantine because the chances are they will subsequently turn positive. But whilst they are negative, they bring back negative test results. The good news out of that is it's highly unlikely they will have been able to spread the virus.
Will daycare centres remain open?
My understanding is for essential workers only over the next 5 days. We need people to staff our power stations or our Western Power depots, our supermarkets, our hospitals, our police stations, our essential services. And those people need to go to work. If I can finish, those people need to go to work. So we've come up with a regime which is pretty tough. It's pretty tough. It's as hard as anywhere, designed to try and crush the virus and stop it getting a foothold in Western Australia. This will be disruptive. This will be very disruptive to many families and many businesses. But what we're trying to do is have a short period of disruption rather than a long period of disruption, and therefore some adverse health outcomes. We're trying to crush the virus as quickly as we possibly can.
At the end of the 5 days, is it life back to normal if this has not been widespread community transmission? Or are we more likely to see a gradual easing of restrictions like we've seen in Queensland?
I think it'll be the latter. So hopefully our enhanced testing and large numbers of people being tested will result in no positives, though we can't be sure of that. We're hopeful it'll be no positives, but then a gradual scale down, I would expect. But that's something we'll take health advice on over the coming week.
So we're talking about disruption that's probably going to last not just for 5 days, but weeks to come.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens when these things happen. Western Australia's gone 10 months without a community case. We don't know how this security guard acquired the virus in the hotel. Obviously, it's highly transmissible. You've seen this everywhere all over the world. This virus is insidious, it's highly transmissible. Sometimes we don't even know if any mistakes or any breaches of protocol took place. We'll find that out. But it is very difficult to control. We've done our state, the people of the state, the quarantine system, has done a remarkable job really for the last 10 months in containing it. But we've now had an outbreak and we need to deal with that. So our model is to deal with it very, very quickly and harshly. If I can finish.
Yeah.
It is to deal with it very, very quickly and very, very harshly so that we can bring it under control and not have community spread of the virus as you've seen in other countries around the world.
What have we learned then from Victoria, given that we weren't up to date with daily testing and we were letting people leave working their jobs in security to jump in Uber cars and drive around?
Yeah. We're putting in place daily testing, saliva testing. That was agreed in basically mid-January. and it requires a bit of time to put it in place.
Well, we had 10 months, didn't we, since Victoria had this issue?
There was a national discussion at National Cabinet. From memory, it was around the 8th of January. And we decided, I came out of that meeting very keen to put in place saliva testing. We're already doing weekly testing of PCR. Saliva testing is actually not as accurate, just so you know. It has a fail rate, maybe 10% fail rate. So it is not certain, but it is better than nothing. So we were putting that in place. Obviously working it up was one of those difficult things. Then working up the protocols around second jobs for security or cleaners or those sorts of things is difficult, as I said, because policing it and making sure people don't do a second job is hard. But that's the work that has been going on now for a considerable period of time. And don't worry, we have been doing our best to get that in place for a considerable period of time. It's not easy, and all the states have struggled with this.
Did this guy respond as he was meant to? Because it looks like he's gone around to GP clinics and chemists, I assume, because he wasn't feeling great, rather than self-isolating or immediately reporting this to the health department. Was there a failure in his actions to respond to it?
Look, I don't know the exact answer to that. You're dealing with people and people's personal behaviours. But he went to a doctor because he was unwell. And I'm advised sometimes some of the symptoms of COVID are not what you might think. They're sometimes not respiratory. It can manifest itself in other ways. And so he may not have thought it was COVID related because his symptoms may not have been the traditionally understood symptoms of COVID. So he went to the doctor. He then got a COVID test after that. And that's the details we're trying to work out as we speak to work out exactly how it occurred. But the main thing here is we have a problem. We need the state and the people of the state to help in fixing it. And that's what we're trying to do here today. Make sure that we deal with this quickly, effectively and efficiently and don't get community spread of the virus as you've seen in other states and other parts of the world.
What's the likelihood of more cases from here?
We don't know the answer to that. It's a highly infectious virus, highly infectious. Now, when Brisbane had this issue, what was that, a month ago? A cleaner in hotel quarantine, very similar circumstances. It didn't result in community spread of the virus. Basically, they crushed it because they took dramatic action immediately. That's the model we're following. Dramatic action immediately to try and crush the virus and prevent it from getting community spread across Western Australia. The actions we've taken are actually harsher than what Brisbane put in place. But if it is the UK variant, which we suspect it is highly transmissible, and we need to make sure we do everything we can to stop its spread. So, look, this is not welcome news. This is not what I wanted to be telling people. I was so pleased, like everyone, the state had been doing so well. But by acting quickly and by everyone cooperating, hopefully, we can crush it in its tracks and we can be back to normal in coming weeks.
Is the election campaign on ice at the moment?
I will suspend our campaign in the next 5 days. Obviously, it's the furthest thing from my mind at the moment. We'll suspend our campaign.
And can I ask Andy a couple of questions, please?
Is that you finished with me?
And the opposition's agreed to that? You know?
Well, we do our campaign. I don't know what they do with
But
theirs.
if so, they don't have to suspend it, I suppose.
Any more for me?
Well, just quick just to follow up on that. I mean, they can't just go wandering around, can they, and holding press conferences?
I have to communicate. There's essential work, which is an exemption, and me communicating essential messages, I think, is important. I'll leave it for the opposition to determine what they do. But we'll be suspending our campaign. I don't think people want political campaigning over at least the next 5 days.
And there's going to be no online learning for schools, I assume?
This came to light this morning. So we will work with education to work up what can be put in place. But it is 5 days. At this point in time, it is 5 days. And so, we'll work with education to see what we can put in place. But for the next 5 days, it's essentially an extension of the Christmas holidays.
Andy, can I just ask you a couple of questions of just sort of a nuts and bolts thing? Whether women giving birth will have their partners with them, and whether people who are in hospital ill, whether and who can visit them, and under what protocols.
So, look, we'll look at each of those, different circumstances. So generally, there won't be any visitors going into the hospitals. So that will be the general principle. But obviously, there may be exemptions, and that'd be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Well, when a woman's giving birth, how do you say to one that her partner can go in and another they can't?
Well, that's what I mean. We will certainly consider those. That that's obviously a particular circumstance, but we'll need to look at what that means, and there may be other circumstances apart from those that we have to consider. And we've done this before, where families, because somebody is in the last stages of life, where they've had to come in just to see a relative, and we'll work with them. Now that will probably involve obviously wearing masks and appropriate protective equipment, and that would be the same case with birthing partners.
Not much certainty there though.
Well,
I know it's an uncertain time, but you're not giving much certainty.
There's not a set protocol, but we'll obviously be compassionate and consider the circumstances going forward. But it will involve protective equipment.
A crowd of up to 30,000 were expected for the Perth Scorchers match on Thursday at Optus Stadium. Is that now just cancelled?
Yes, it will. Well, whether it goes ahead as a match without crowd will be obviously a discussion we may need to have with the Big Bash League. But at this stage, because of these restrictions, there wouldn't be any crowd at that match.
Perth Festival starts Friday. That's off.
Again, yes.
Fringe Festival.
Again, all of those events will be cancelled for these 5 days. We would have to we should have by, hopefully by midweek, a better idea of, what cases are going to come out of this, and, what the likely ramifications are. As the Premier said, we've seen a few of these where, by getting on top of them, by locking them down, doing the contact tracing, getting people into home quarantine, and doing the extensive testing, we've been able to rapidly identify and make sure that those people are locked down, and that has worked very effectively in both Queensland and South Australia. So that's obviously the model we're looking for, but that will obviously require some hard decisions and hard lockdown in the first instance.
As the medical expert, could you respond to the fact, or the strong possibility that this gentleman has the UK variant, and what is the health, your response as the health expert to that particular aspect? Does it raise particular concerns?
Yes, it does, because we know that the UK variant, the B117 variant, is probably around 50 to 70% more transmissible. We've seen in both outbreaks in both Queensland within the hotel, and also more recently in New Zealand, that these variants do spread more quickly, and we do need to actually clamp down probably harder to prevent the spread of these variants than we may do with the normal COVID-19 disease. So this is why Queensland shut down so fast when they only had one case as well, for exactly this reason. If these variants get out into the communities, particularly a community like WA, where people have been able to intermingle, mix, large numbers are able to congregate together, then it will spread, and if that gets into those communities, it will spread quickly, and that's obviously what we're trying to avoid.
How likely do you think is that community transmission has already occurred?
It's very difficult to say. As you're probably aware, that some people are very good spreaders. We do get super spreaders within COVID-19, but we've also had others, like the 20-year-old lady in Queensland who was out in the community for 3 or 4 days and didn't manage to spread it to anybody. So it will vary from person to person. But the fact that we've got 3 negative cases so far suggests that, and they were the most likely contacts they're the most likely people to get. So we hopefully have got it early on, but we obviously need people who may have been at those places that the Minister outlined to get tested. And obviously the other thing is, if people are symptomatic, if they have the symptoms of respiratory illness, if they have fevers, if they have gastro, because it does present in many different ways, get tested. If you're symptomatic, even if you're not in those areas, but if you are unwell, this is the time. This is not the time to sort of think, I want to soldier on. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit off. This is the time that if you're symptomatic, to get tested, because that will help us to get a handle on whether there is wider community disease out there or whether we've been able to isolate it.
And why aren't you locking down the entire state like we saw South Australia do back in November?
Look, like the UK, we're locking down about 80% of the state by locking down
the population
areas, and that's. But we are trying to obviously look at where the risk is. Now, there are no indications that this person has been outside of those areas, and that he hasn't been down, into any of the other regional areas. So we believe. Now, if we get any information that suggests that that may have been the case, or that there has been any spread further, or any contacts that have gone further, then we'd obviously look at that as an option.
Private schools went back last week. Are they?
They will have to. All schools will be closed, both public and private, from Monday. So they'll need to put in arrangements. And appreciate that a few of them have already gone back.
And a quirky one, obviously, borders have flooded back into private schools from the country.
Yeah, we'll have.
Parents, can they visit them, or?
We'll have to work. We'll work with the private schools to look at their borders. That is an issue, but at this stage, they're not at a particular risk. We've got no indication that they are at risk, but we'll obviously need to look at how we lock them down in the next week. Just, there was a question earlier around when we expect this person was infectious from.
Yeah.
So he presented. He became symptomatic on Thursday, the 28th. So we believe we work generally on 2 days. So he was probably symptomatic from. He probably, was infectious from the 26th, working on 48 hours. And there's just a point of clarity. We have had further information that he was working in that facility between the 23rd of January and the 27th of January. And he was tested on the 23rd of January when we know he was negative, and he worked those times. So when he actually became infectious may be before that. It was probably, we suspect, around the 24th of January, 24th or 25th of January, and he was infectious from the 26th.
Commissioner, in terms of the policing of this matter now?
I'll just make a couple of comments and then answer the questions. Look, we are in an unfolding and dynamic situation, and we do remain, of course, in a state of emergency. So I'd ask for the community to just cooperate the way we did certainly through March and through to April, May. We had tremendous support and cooperation from the West Australian community, and I'd ask you just to be very careful that you don't do things that you wouldn't want done to you. It sounds like a biblical statement, but be considerate about your neighbours. Don't do this panic shopping and all this sort of thing, because we just have to respond in the way that we responded previously, and we will get through this, I think, in consideration of all our neighbours and those vulnerable people in the community. There will be queues at the COVID clinics. We know that. It's going to be a hot week. What will police be doing? We will be out in the community providing protection and reassurance for our community. Yes, we will be setting up the vehicle road checkpoints, so certainly in the lockdown areas, the Perth metropolitan area, Peel and the southwest is about 80% of the West Australian population. So the vehicle movement's there. One of the questions, for instance, about collecting school boarders. There'll be people who are ill that need medical attention, others that may need to move Clearly, we want our freight movement to continue through. The G2G application process is what people will have to go through. They'll need a QR code when they come to a vehicle checkpoint. That will need to be carefully policed, and it will be carefully policed. When we went through this regime early last year, we didn't actually have to infringe many people because people were cooperative. And that's what I want to reinforce to the community again now. Just act sensibly and we'll be able to get through this. So yes, police will be conducting checkpoints. Yes, if you need to move between Southwest and, for instance, to Perth, you will need a G2G pass. And that'll be checked at the QR checking points that the police will be setting up. But importantly, as has been said from the Premier, the Deputy Premier and the Chief Health Officer, stay home. You can't go to your holiday home. Stay home if you can do work at home remotely. Don't move about the community unless you need those absolute essential services, food and 1 hour exercise. But you must wear a mask. Within the Perth metropolitan area, Peel and the Southwest, you must wear a mask even at work, even in the community. If you are going out, you can't go with more than one other person for exercise, for instance. But we do have extensive and experienced people, obviously from the health sector, police and other agencies, and we appeal to the community, act considerately and don't abuse the trust of your neighbours and cooperate. Happy to take any questions.
Commissioner, can I just for clarity, because my original reading was that the Southwest Peel area and Perth are all in one sector together. But are you saying that there will be checkpoints between Peel and Perth, Peel and the Southwest?
Yes, there will be. So we'll treat it the same as we did previously. You will recall that we had 9 separate regional areas, April, May last year, in limiting the spread. And this is the public health advice, is that we want Perth metropolitan people to stay in the Perth metro area. We want Peel people to stay in their area and Southwest in their area. Otherwise we could have people saying, I want to go to my holiday home and travelling back and forward, and that would not be the situation we want. So for these next 5 days, you have to stay at home and only go to work if you're an essential worker and otherwise work remotely. The same situation applies with schools. So the schools outside of the metropolitan, Peel and Southwest areas, the restaurants and hotels, for instance, will be able to operate as per normal unless the public health situation and the Chief Health Officer advises us. Then we'll immediately put in plans to extend it. But what we're wanting to deal with is the immediate situation. There is presently one person who's been reported as positive, and that's, I think, the situation we've got. And until we get all of the other testing to be done, we've just got to act very cautiously and swiftly, and that's what's happened.
Can you just remind us the northern metropolitan border of Perth? Is it Yanchep?
Look, it's in. I don't have the exact map in front of me, but it'll be on our website. But it's around about the Two Rocks area north, and that is defined, and the maps will be available on the WA government website.
And when will those checkpoints be in effect?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Right. Yep.
So like somewhere in the morning.
Yeah, look, we'll have random patrols tonight, but look, I've had to suspend police rosters. This is dynamic, so I can't guarantee I'll have all the checkpoints up and running tonight. We need to support the entire community. I want to make sure police are in shopping centres and places like that to make sure that we've got community calm, but certainly the checkpoints will be out in full force tomorrow.
I think this is an important point. I don't know if it's one for the Commissioner to answer, but this individual was probably infectious from the 26th. When did he work his last rideshare shift?
I've had information given to me this morning from one of the early queries. He last worked on Friday the 22nd as a rideshare driver. So he has told us that he hasn't worked since, and we've checked with that rideshare company. We have no information to suggest he's worked beyond Friday the 22nd. So on the information that we've uncovered to date, it's apparent that he has only been infected in the hotel quarantine situation.
Would you like to see? Something done now, in respect of people working in hotel security or in hotel jobs, cleaners, and that sort of stuff, banning them from having secondary employment? I know it's difficult,
Yep.
but it's obviously a greater risk.
Look, that's a situation which the Premier addressed earlier. Certainly the saliva testing is in place now. That is on that element of it. But in terms of people having multiple jobs, look, he is a registered security guard, and so we have to ensure that they've got sufficient income. And there's a proposal afoot as to whether you could compensate people to not require them to get other part-time jobs. So that's a matter that's on foot. It'll be dealt with. We'll talk about it this afternoon.
Do you know how long you've been working the hotel quarantine system?
No, I don't, but I do know that he is a licensed security guard.
And his last shift, I think, was on Wednesday.
His last shift was on Wednesday the 27th.
But was he rostered on to do more in coming days?
Yes, he was. He was rostered, in fact, to work on Saturday the 30th. In fact, he felt unwell. He took himself to see a doctor and subsequently got tested. So he got tested at one of the COVID clinics. So we know that he was sensible, he's been cooperative, and he did not go to work because he felt unwell. And that's the message for the community. If you're unwell, don't go to work.
And he's offered no idea as to how he may have contracted it within that hotel environment.
Look, he's being interviewed by our contact tracers, that is through Health Department, and we know that they will do their job as thoroughly as possible, but he's been working there over a number of days, and the Chief Health Officer has just expanded on the fact that he's worked a number of shifts earlier. So that'll be a very thorough forensic process.
So if somebody, I know that some people already travel to regional areas or camping this weekend, is it time for them to basically come back now? Come back to Perth right now?
Look, what I would appeal to people is, again, not to panic, like I mentioned in terms of shopping. There'll be people listening to this conference right now that are down the southwest and have probably made plans to return to Perth tonight. Then I would expect that you would just be deliberate in making your plans, calm, and return home. We don't want people just delaying things and saying, I can't move. We're giving people as much warning within the reason of the public health advice. So, there's still some 3 or 4 hours to go, and we want people to act calmly, and we'll try and ensure that applies.
How old is this man? Is he a dual national? And what were his symptoms?
Oh, look, I don't have all of the particulars about that. He's in his mid-20s. We need to protect the man's privacy. I don't know, but I think he may be a dual citizen, well, certainly an international person. So I don't know his citizenship. We haven't had time to test all those sort of things.
And sorry, just to confirm, sorry if this has been brought up before, so just to make it clear, can people from interstate travel to WA? And if people from other parts of WA travel to eastern states, we're just getting some questions throughed through to me.
So the present restrictions that, in fact, I signed the directions only yesterday. I expect that the other states and territories will be making consideration about that. There are no restrictions on people coming into Western Australia other than what was announced by the Premier yesterday.
And just on the regions, is Perth...
Sorry, there is a present classification process. So New South Wales are in a different category, but for Queenslanders and Victorian travellers, they will be free to come in on the arrangement. That is, everyone has to have a G2G pass, etc. But today's announcement is not about saying don't come in. I think the sensible thing, though, that you need to understand is people who are intending to come to Perth, unless you actually have to come, don't come, because it's a situation where you'll be in a lockdown. You'll be having to arrive at Perth Airport and you'll immediately have to go home if you've got one here. If you don't have a home here, I expect sensible people will say, look, it's not wise to come here.
Is Perth and Peel treated as one or two regions, and where can people find out what is defined as the southwest?
That will be on the government website. So they align with the government regional boundary lines. They were very clearly mapped and on the website, so people can go onto the wa.gov website, and those maps are very clearly marked out there.
So is Perth and Peel one or two regions?
No, they're two.
They're two. Supermarkets are already crazy. That's happened despite what's been said in this press conference. Do you have your officers out at supermarkets now?
Yeah, yes we do. I asked my officers as soon as I could this morning to make sure we get public policing and reassurance out there. They won't be able to be at every single shopping centre. But look, again, I appeal to the community to act sensibly. Unfortunately, not all people take that sort of advice, but certainly police patrols are out there. Thanks very much.
Good day.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify one other point, if I may. Just in relation to people who have got operations scheduled for this week, please do not call the hospitals up. They will contact you with regards to any rescheduling of your surgery, and that includes public and private hospitals. Thank you.
Clarify two quick other things. Southwest is the normal boundary of the southwest. Harvey, Collie, Bridgetown, Manjimup, Pemberton, Augusta, Nannup, Margaret River, Busselton, Dunsborough, Bunbury, all of those sorts of communities is the southwest. The Peel region, I think, is well understood. And secondly, I've contacted the other premiers, the Prime Minister. Our advice to people from interstate is now is not the time to come. It's a matter of the other states, whether they wish to put up a border with Western Australia or a hotspot or whatever they wish to do. We obviously also have restrictions on people coming from Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales at this point in time. Those arrangements remain in place as we announced last week.
And did I understand you to say before that overseas arrivals, you're asking for those to be suspended for WA?
I'm sorry?
Did I understand you to say before that arrivals from overseas, you've spoken to the Prime Minister? No.
So that will continue on.
That will just continue and they'll just go into...
That will continue. So we'll see what happens over the next 5 days.
Yep.
We currently have half capacity, so 512 Australians returning per week, which is, alleviated the pressure on our hotels, although in this circumstance it didn't help us. But obviously we'll see what happens over the course of the coming week, whether we need to make a request to the federal government for that continued reduction to continue for a longer period of time. What happened in other states when they've had outbreaks is they've obviously reduced the number of people coming from overseas. We'll monitor this and see whether or not we need to do that on an ongoing basis.
So the variant case, was that from the UK? Silly question.
As we announced, we suspect so. There's 4 cases in that hotel, 3 of which we knew were variant, 2 UK, 1 South African, the other one we're not sure at this point in time. The person on the floor who was positive, where the security guard was working, was a UK strain person. So we suspect it's the UK strain, but genomic testing takes days to do, and we'll have to wait for that before we finally work it out.
You may not know the answer, but have any other states or territories indicated that they may view WA as a hotspot area?
Not yet. Not yet.
Caretaker period, I believe, is Wednesday. Is that going to inhibit your decision-making ability at all?
I don't think so. The caretaker protocols allow us to deal with this situation, and so the caretaker protocols are very carefully drafted to allow governments still to govern in these sorts of emergency situations. So I'd expect it would be able to continue on. We'll obviously provide briefings to the opposition as we go along. Thanks very much.
But the writs will get served on that.
That's by the law. We can't control that.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.